Hello, everybody. Happy Easter. I'm Father George Williams with the Catholic Prison Ministry Coalition, and welcome to our April webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about a presentation on interpersonal violence and street violence in our culture and how we can address these issues in our ministry. And we're very fortunate to have four panelists with us today. Father David Kelly is the Executive Director of Precious Blood Ministry of Reconciliation in Chicago. And he is the founder and executive director of this. And in 2000, he, along with other members of his religious congregation, began PBMR, create a place for those who have been impacted by violence and conflict. So PBMR reaches out to the people who have been harmed, to the people who have done harm, and to the community. And they also strive to be a resource to other groups and communities who seek reconciliation. For more than 30 years, Father Kelly's worked as a chaplain in Cook County Jail and Cook County Juvenile Temporary Detention Center. And he, among many other educational accomplishments, he has a doctorate from DePaul University. His doctoral thesis was called Responding to Violence Among Urban Youth, a Restorative Approach. So we also have with us three returning citizens and restorative justice practitioners. We have Joseph Mapp, Jojo, who is a case manager at the program. We also have Fred Weatherspoon, who is a program manager, and Joe Montgomery, who is one of the youth mentors. So as we're talking, please be sure to, if you have any questions or comments, you can type them in on the chat feature, and we will pass your questions or comments on to the panelists. So welcome to all of you. We're so very delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're glad to be here. So do you want me to just start a little bit, Father George?
Sure. Yeah.
I can probably kick it off and just say a little bit about Precious Blood and how we got started and why we got started, and a little bit of what we do, and then I'll throw it back to Jojo, Fred, and Joe to speak more deeply about what their experience has been. So we started really in 2002, and for many years I worked for Colby House, which is the jail ministry at the Archdiocese, and that's a parish-based jail ministry, it was. And what happened was I would accompany a lot of families who would lose their children to incarceration. And in the state of Illinois, as across our country, we try children as adults, hold them accountable as though they were adults, even though they're not. And we give them extreme sentences. And so many of those young people would get 30, 40 years in prison, life without the possibility of parole. And I would accompany those families as they journeyed through that nightmare. But at the same time, because it's a parish-based jail ministry, I did a lot of funerals for young people who had been caught up in gang violence. And so at that time, Colby House was a parish also, and we lived on a gang boundary. And there was a lot of fighting back and forth. And I would oftentimes know both the person who was harmed and the person who did the harm. And so we tried to create spaces where healing was possible. But when I go to court with one or the other, there was no place for healing. It was all about punishment. It was all about retribution. It's all about how all the resources go to do some further harm on the person who is accused. And some of those were very personal. And so one was very personal. I came home and sat in my office and said, we can do better than this. So especially as a person who lived in the community, and what I strive to be as a faith-based person, that I thought that we can do better than just punishment. And so in 2002, my religious congregation, which is Missionaries of the Precious Blood, we were, like all of us, getting smaller in number and getting older. But we wanted to do something new to show that there was still relevance in our religious congregation. And so a group of us, four of us, started Precious Blood Ministry of Reconciliation. And we just, for a year, walked around different communities, kind of sharing a little bit about who we were and seeing if there was any receptivity. And back at the Yards, where we're presently located, were very eager to have us be a part of their community. And so we joined the back of the Yards community, which is on the south side of Chicago. And we just got there was an apartment, a janitor's apartment in one of the local parishes, and we kind of housed ourselves there as the first PBMR. And out of that space, we just kind of really built relationships with the community and continued to go into jails and detention centers, et cetera, and try to really listen to the needs of the community. Now we're 20 years old. We moved out of that small space into another space We're in the same very neighborhood, but our main building is a school building, an old school building, an old Catholic school building. And we have a number of other buildings that we utilize for housing. So we do a lot of reentry for men and women coming home from prison, families that are unstable, and a whole host of other programs that come out of our relationships with people. So I oftentimes say that we're relational first and programmatic second. Everything we do is in response to what we've been informed or told by those that we are privileged to accompany. So both those coming home from prison, oftentimes housing is a critical need. They don't have the kind of housing. In fact, they can't come home, aren't eligible for parole until they can find some housing. And so we started to develop that. And so we embraced right from the beginning a restorative justice philosophy, because it allowed us to live out our charism of reconciliation, of creating safe spaces where people can come together and participate in one another's healing. And so restorative justice is all about relationships. And when there's a violation of that relationships, or that relationship is strained or torn, you really work to repair that harm. So in essence, restorative justice asks what happened and how do we repair the harm, as opposed to the criminal justice system that says what law was broken and who do we get to punish for that law that was broken. And the state takes on the mantle of being the victim, even though the victim oftentimes is left to the side, only to be utilized when there's a need in court. And so that's who we are. We've now have a staff of about 30 individuals who work in a variety of fronts. Most of those who are staff of PBMR have been impacted themselves by either violence or incarceration. And so for me, it's just it's a great honor to be able to accompany people like JoJo and Fred and Joe as they are working to really make a difference in our community, but also make a difference in the criminal justice system. And from the outset, I know that the initial title of this was gangs, and I kind of pushed back a little bit about that and said it's really not about gangs in the sense that 30 years ago, it's really about interpersonal violence that's happening because of trauma, because of the pain and the hurt that so many of our young people and our families are carrying. And so it's the old adage, hurt people hurt people. And so our take as a restorative justice organization is to really start to try to find spaces and places and ways to heal harm, which is our greatest violence prevention strategy, is to heal the hurt in people's lives so that they don't do further harm. And so that's a brief kind of sharing of who PBMR is and what we strive to do. Our mission is radical hospitality, hope, and healing. We've got to open our doors very wide to people who perhaps don't feel very welcome in other spaces. They don't feel welcome in churches and schools oftentimes because of the way they look, or the way they act, or the way they just carry themselves. We hope that we have a responsibility once we have a relationship with them to really walk with them, accompany them on the journey to find what it is that they want to do with their lives, whether that's employment or education or mental health kind of support, or whatever that might be. That gives a person a sense of hope if he has a job and can really provide for his family. And then healing ultimately, the way we look at violence is through the lens of trauma and trauma-informed care. This is a public health issue, not a criminal justice issue. So that's kind of, in essence, who PBMR and how we strive to work and respond to the violence and the hurts within and the inequities and racism within our communities and within our society. So I'm just going to throw it over to Fred and let Fred kind of share a little bit about who he is and kind of his take on some of the things that he sees in this work.
Thank you, Father Kelly. As usual, you do most of the heavy lifting when it comes to describing our work. My name is Fred Weatherspoon. As I was introduced earlier, I am a program manager at Precious Blood Ministry Reconciliation. And the programs I manage are youth-based programs in the demographic ages of the kids we deal with, are 14 to 24. So it's like the critical age group that most people want to sort of serve and sort of attend to. But how I got to Precious Blood, who I am, I was once incarcerated. Well, I was incarcerated for 25 years. I was inside of IDOC for that time. I originally had a natural life sentence plus 30 years. I caught my case, which was a murder, back when I was 16 going on 17 years old. So I've been at Precious Blood here now 3 years now. I originally started off as in Joe's position as a youth mentor, and eventually was able to sort of move up to this position I'm in now. I think Father Kelly sort of spoke to the issue, to the work we do sort of succinctly and clearly. So yes, we are involved in not just the youth's life personally, me personally, but the families of the youth, right? I think a lot of times we fail to recognize how most of these issues are not centered around one person in the family, right? It's a family, and it's generational, right? A lot of these issues that we confront daily. So yes, that's who I am, and I am open and willing to take any question. There's no taboo subjects or questions for me. Feel free to ask me anything. Yeah, and I'll pass it to Joe Montgomery.
Thanks, Fred. As mentioned, I am Joe Montgomery, youth mentor at PBMR. Once formerly incarcerated myself, got out. I probably got locked up again, and I'm out now. Had a little passage, but that just speaks. Only reason why I speak on that, it just speaks on the relentlessness of PBMR, like how far they willing to go, not give up, the second chances, third chances, fourth chances. Like they don't turn their back, won't leave you stranded. As long as they see that you're working towards yourself and trying to better yourself in any possible way, they are willing to take that step with you. I've been a part of PBMR since I was 14. I'll be 25 tomorrow. And it's been a long journey, but it's been worthwhile. And just knowing that I got them by my side. I was once a youth there, now I mentor the youth. And I think my role, my piece in this puzzle is very critical and important, because I was once them, and now that I'm on the other side, they got a little more hope that it could be a good future for them if they keep working towards. Like, we fight a lot of struggles every day, living in our neighborhood, growing up in this neighborhood, and having people think that we are not as important as them. And, they try to belittle us every chance we get, but we keep on the rise to the occasion. So just showing the youth that no matter how much you do out here, you got to try to make a positive impact. You got to try to do the positive things, even though it's so much negativity in a way, and that, we can't see the sunshine during the dark clouds, but we could get to the other side eventually. So my role is just to keep their spirits high, make sure that they taken care of in ways that they might not get at home, in ways that they might not get out on the streets if that's what they are involved in, and not to judge them as I was once judged. So that's my role here at PBMR. And like Fred said, I'm open to any questions, anything, just ask me. I'm willing to answer. And I'll pass it over to a formerly incarcerated brother of mine, Jojo Mapp.
I appreciate it, Joe. Y'all make it difficult to follow this up. Father Kelly, I think you definitely gave a great example of what we look like, what this work looks like. Our role in this work is to manifest it, to align with our mission. And so my role as a program manager for communities partnering in peace is to collaborate not only with hyperlocal work here, but to collaborate with different organizations throughout the city to carry out creating and reclaiming spaces for safe spaces for the community and how to engage. Also, I'm the director of reentry. And in this role, I have 3 responsibilities. There's direct services to participants and their family to help them engage in different systems to walk through, such as housing, employment, and the different systems, the myriad of systems that a person have to navigate through these different spaces and challenges to walk along their journey. My second role is encouraging and creating spaces for community engagement, like I spoke earlier of the upcoming event we're having, because we try to engage the entire community. We know it's not an individual effort, as Fred spoke to, but it's about incorporating the community to play a part and invest in our healing. I say our because I'm connected to the community. My third responsibility is a policy advocate. So in that, I try to partner with different organizations and different places and educate the community and the public about some of the policies that impact these communities, that create the spaces in which young men such as Fred, Joe, and myself, because we all began our engagement with the criminal system at early ages as teens. So we're trying to correct some of these systems that create these circumstances in which young men and young women such as ourselves feel we have to take alternative routes to survive in the communities in which we're in. Also, in my role as director of reentry, we support individuals because we're looking at our current situation. We want to abolish the need for prisons and create environments in which the community can work through problems, resolve any conflict, and heal itself. But currently, right now, because there is a criminal system, we work with individuals while incarcerated to start preparing for their transition post-release. And this line of work, it takes a lot because we also try to support individuals in identifying their trauma that they may have experienced, learning the language to articulate it, and then to better navigate through it. And we're speaking as commoners, but we also partner with organizations that offer behavioral health services to help individuals unpack these past traumas that they may have experienced. Just like my peers, I was incarcerated at a young age, and I've served 26 years, 5 months, and 26 days. So, and I've read a question in the post in the chat that asked, what if it was someone's family? What if it was our family that was hurt? Well, we are sitting here as examples of what grace and redemption look like, because we wasn't judged from that moment in time, and we was allowed and given the space to give back to our community in a meaningful way. So I'm thankful and appreciative to be in a position to do that type of work, this type of work. And I also recognize that, man, it would take a lifetime to heal. And if I can't, not to work or strive to be forgiven from one individual family, but try to create the space so no other family will have to feel like they suffered or feel the harm that made them felt by the people that's connected to anything that I may have done in my past. This is what motivates this work that I do, and I'm sure that motivates the work that Joe and Fred do, if I liberty to speak for. And just like them, I'm open to any and all questions so we can get a better understanding of what it made, the mindset of what probably previously was our past behavior and what drives us to do the work that we do now. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Somebody else asked a question. Any one of you can tackle this one. How is PBMR working to break down the intercommunity violence that you talk about? How, describe a typical day in your work.
So I'm going to just say one thing so we do a lot of accompaniment. So we create these spaces along the way where people have a chance to really talk about what's happening in their own lives. And I'll give you an example. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, one of our young people shot another one of our young people. Luckily, it was not lethal, shot him in both of his legs. We responded quickly to kind of tap down any kind of retaliation. We used our relationships with both parties, both the young person who was shot and also the person that did the shooting, and really worked, and Fred and Jojo and Joe worked, and others really worked hard to help them to have someone who would listen to them. Because if you were shot by somebody, there's a sense of shame and pride about it. In retaliation, somebody needs to talk, to listen to your anger, to your hurt, to your rage, your pain, and allow that to kind of be vented and to respond. In an equally way, to work with the young person who did the shooting, because the police were involved, and work with the young person who did the shooting to distance himself right now from the neighborhood so that no harm would come to him or hit some of his friends. And so really work to tap down the retaliatory kind of nature that all of us hold. If I hurt people. And so if I get hurt, my tendency is to lash back out. And so we really interject ourselves into those spaces to help a young person and anybody to really kind of be accompanied and work through some of that rage and that anger. And then eventually, we're not there yet, eventually we hope to bring these parties together and really talk about what happened and why did it happen, what can we do to help repair the harm. So that's one thing individually we do. and so we have an outreach team that responds to all shootings out there in the neighborhood, and we strive to do that kind of thing with those situations. But we also try to get in front of that by doing, and JoJo can talk a little bit about the Light in the Night, well, where it's community engagement. We really reach out to the community to create these spaces, whether it's Hoops in the Hood or barbecues or theater or what it might be, to help the community come to know each other. Because you usually don't hate someone you know. And the problem within our communities and oftentimes our society is we have these differences. We're so segregated from one another that we don't even know our neighbors. But if we get to know one another, we tend to kind of respond in a different kind of way.
Yeah, so JoJo or Joe or Fred, can you talk about a typical day that you have?
So and to the point, I'll go to the typical day in 1 second, but to the point that you asked originally, and the point Father Kelly made is one thing I appreciate about what we are able to do here, amongst many things we do to address these issues, is we are able to work with kids across different boundaries, right? Addresses, geographical boundaries, right? So we can have a kid. I have a couple of kids who originally may have started off living in New City/backyards. Now they live in what we call the hundreds or farther south, right? So they'll take, and we'll still engage, right? So they'll become friends with these kids in this community, right? And they'll introduce PBMR values, PBMR approach to different kids in different communities. So, and a couple other things we do is a lot of sports events, right? Like we'll put these kids in sports events with kids outside of this community, right? And with kids within this community, because there's a lot of boundaries within this. I mean, like a mile radius, there are so many different boundaries in which kids don't cross or feel they can't cross that we try to get them to get beyond, right? So put simply, we just engage, right? We get out there and we physically engage the kids. So a day for me is it starts off. It may start off me taking some kids to school in the morning. I may get a call from a kid say I need to ride to school. In order for this kid to get to school, I'll take him to school, and then I'll come into the space and I'll just do an assessment of what needs to be done, whether it's paperwork and/or sort of small minor stuff. And around 2 to 3 o'clock, when the kids are getting out of school and coming to what we call the center, that's when the engagement begins. We have different programs depending on what day it is. If it's a Monday, we may have a ceramics arts program established and going. If it's a Tuesday, we have another program going. We have our music program. So we just engage with programs daily. So that's I say there's a couple programs I'm involved in. That's the mentoring portion of the program. The SCAN, which is called Service Coordination and Navigation program, which is an Inglewood-based program. It's a sort of a different approach. So we'll have individual staff, which I call navigators, engage with the participants. Whether that may be one day, it may be taking somebody shopping or shopping to get some clothes that they need for work, right? Or it may be taking somebody to get signed up for school, or taking somebody to go get their driver's license, or accompany somebody to the hospital, right? You may have to, because like I say, we deal with parents too, so there may be some parental sort of issues that needs to be addressed. So there's not a typical day for me in this work. So
like Fred said, there's no 2 days that are the same. Our day may begin with our philosophy is participant-centered and strength-based. So what I mean by that is, depending on the participant and based off what their strengths are, we try to develop plans around that to help build them, or walk with them, I should say, to that point of success as they define it. So for example, a typical day for me may be, I may have a participant that may want to be accompanied to court, because engaging in the criminal system is a scary thing. And in most instances, when a person has that stigma of just being entangled in the criminal system, people start to separate. But here we wrap our arms around individuals and bring them in even more and try to work with them to help them restore to a sense of human dignity at its very basic principle. As Father Kelly talked about, the relational aspect. So our engagement may come through relationships. And on our way to this court hearing, we may talk about relational as far as how people conduct themselves with their family, with their significant other, or whatever the case may be. So it's mentorship on the way to a different destination. We engage in different systems. An individual may not have a social security card. If you don't have one form of vital document, it's almost difficult to nearly impossible to get the other form, because each place will tell you, hey, you need this form to get this form. So we will accompany them and help engage, and sometimes help them articulate some of the frustration they may have in a meaningful way to get some type of progress. This, like Fred said, the light in the night. What light in the night events are chances for us to reclaim safe spaces. So if there was an incident, say if there's an incident that happened in the community, like Father Kelly spoke to a shooting that one participant shot another. And that same day, we want to be responsive. So we want to let the entire community know that, hey, it's still safe for little kids to run and play on the front porch. It's still safe for grandparents to sit out. So we go with our response team, which is the outreach team, and case management to engage the community to create bouncy houses for the kids. We also partner with the local police force, not to exact any type of revenge or punishment, but to also try to do community engagement to work with them through this process of creating safe spaces. And I think really Fred talked about our work overlap, because not only do we deal with youth and young emerging adults, we may have individuals throughout their life journey that may have suffered from setbacks or just want to have a place to call community. This is what our day looks like, creating community in spaces where it was seemed to be neglected.
My typical day is a little more, I think a little more direct. And most, I see a couple questions pop up as well I might be able to answer. Hopefully it answers your questions. I work with the kids, the youth, and like nonstop, hands-on, wherever they go, I go, whatever they got going on, I got going on. Like, and I know my hours is like a typical 9 to 5 type stuff, but it's really like a 24-hour thing. Like, it doesn't stop even after work. So my day might have started last night and I brought it over to the next morning, and we carried on and finished what we had to do. Probably had to go see a youth at home and make sure that everything was good. Then the next morning, pick him up, bring him to the center, find a resource that he was lacking at that time. Sometimes throughout the week, we have mentoring, we have circles, because we restorative justice. So we do peace circles just to engage you, see where they at, see how they coming this week and how they better themselves from last week. See what we can do, what's next on our agenda to keep them going. And our program do provide funding for them to keep them with some little money in their pocket, so they won't have to do a lot of things. We have people that volunteer to do some of these programs, then later on get hired as far as like the music, the arts, and stuff like that. That probably have never seen the jail cell, never been incarcerated, anything like that. So we work tremendous ways with the youth to get them different views of life in a way, but not just as a judgmental side. Like, they might see Father Kelly, an older white man who's been in prisons but not incarcerated. So they might see his life and look at his life like, if I was like that, maybe it'd be different. Then they might see another older Black man who have never been in prison but still have the same aspect and work towards it. So we, like, my role is to let them see their worth throughout the day, not the negativity, as I said once before, but just all the positive things they could do. We play ball, we take them out to hoop, let them work off some of their energy. We take them to different places throughout Chicago to get them outside of their normal environment and make sure that, like, they could grasp what's out here in the world that they may have lacked that they didn't have us. So we always try to give them the opportunity to have things that they couldn't have without being systematic in a way, I should say.
Thanks.
Father David, anything you want to add to?
No, I just think that what I've said from the very beginning is true to kind of how we operate. We're relational first and programmatic second. In other words, we build these relationships with these young people and they inform us and families. We do a lot of work with moms who've lost children to homicide. I think we need to bring that more in, is that so we have a lot of mothers who have lost children to homicide, and we use the restorative justice kind of philosophy to engage them and walk with them as well. They're mostly mothers and grandmothers. And then we do circles with them so that they have a space in which they can talk about the pain and the hurt of losing a child without somebody telling them they have to get on with life or just try shush them. And we're very mindful of not to, re-traumatize them, but to allow them to kind of spiral in a more healthy kind of place. And what's powerful is, sometimes, so what people don't understand is oftentimes one family will have a son incarcerated, another son who was killed. And so often when in these kinds of communities, there is not this separation between those who've lost child to homicide and those who've lost a child to incarceration. They're in our families. We all know somebody who's been killed. We all know somebody who's doing time in prison. And so it's part of who we are. And so we don't fall into this one against the other that the system tends to try to do. And we rely on one another for our own healing. So our mothers groups oftentimes will have a mom sitting in there who has a child locked up for 30 years, life without the possibility of parole given to him at 15, and then moms too who have lost children to homicide. And they can share that space together because of what the work that we do to kind of instill this kind of relationship and trust among one another. And it's different than what society oftentimes feels. Like one of the questions I saw before was, what if it was your own family? Well, and unfortunately, my nephew was killed, and my sister, his mother, and his two brothers, my nephews, flew out to Las Vegas in that area to attend the trial of the person who was charged, to advocate that the judge not give him prison, because they recognized that prison was not a sense of accountability. It was just more punishments, more hurt. And so I think when you're deeply involved in this kind of work, you see that the systems, the criminal justice system, is adding to the problem and certainly not a solution. So I'll just put that out there as well.
Thank you. And Jojo, do you want to say a little more? I noticed you responded to one of the comments in your chat box, but regarding diversity and people who come from outside the community that you all work in, and what?
Yes, thank you. So precious bloodness, in my opinion, is highlights or create the space for creativity, or it encourages it. And so, you've listened to Fred, Joe, and myself talk about our lived experience of incarceration. But Precious Blood also encourages us to develop, to go on with ongoing professional development, as well as inviting individuals that's not necessarily from the community to come to the community and have an impact as well. So the thing about it, and Fred mentioned it earlier, that we try to go beyond borders, the borders that limit us based off our race, or based off our educational experience, or based off our lived experience. So it's not that one is preferred over the other, but it's how can we utilize any and if or all of these experiences to have a great impact in our community.
Somebody else wants to know about, say, homeless youth. Is that an issue in the youth that you're working with, that they actually don't have families right now?
Oh, it's housing insecurity. So it's some ways that youth can fall between the cracks because they may be, for lack of a better term, couch surfing. So they may be staying from one friend's house to the next friend's house, to spend the night in the car, to staying with a friend to a friend's house. So it's multiple forms of homelessness or housing insecurity that impact our community. And yes, that is something that we suffer with, or wrestle with, I should say, and trying to assist individuals in getting beyond that point. To speak of that, Precious Blood has a pilot program that kind of operates in three forms. So we have transitional housing for those who are returning from incarceration. So we try to give a leg up to individuals. We also have a program that works, and we partner with other organizations to find permanent housing for individuals that they can rent from. And the pilot program is now, how do we move from this renter, from being a renter to actually purchasing property in community? and as Father Kelly would like to say, and I believe is true as well, that this act as a interruption of violence, as a violence prevention strategy, because when you have people who are invested in the community, who've been supported by the community and have more of a vested interest of building up the community, this creates a safer community.
Just an example of that, Fred, I speak on you. Fred lives just a couple of blocks from PBMR. I guarantee you that block is a lot safer than it was prior to him moving in.
Absolutely. And yes, absolutely. And to the point about youth homelessness, so I'll tell you, so getting into this work, I just had no idea of the magnitude of the problem when it comes to that, right? And JoJo just mentioned it plays out in the form of cow searching. So for instance, like we have a lot of boys who, I would say a significant amount who will all sort of get together consistently and stay at one person's house. A parent will say, okay, one of the kids' mom will say, okay, I don't prefer my kid to have his friends staying at our house, but I feel safe knowing these boys have a roof over their head so they can come stay at our space. So we'll have a house. We have multiple houses where there'll be 6 to 7 kids consistently staying there. I mean, literally living there, right? For various reasons, right? Parents either kick them out or they don't want to honor parents' rules at home. So you know how these youth can be. So, but it's a form of homelessness, and it leads to other issues, right? It leads to desperation. It leads to hunger. It leads to the feeling of, okay, we have to do something to feed ourselves, to clothe ourselves. So it leads to multiple problems. So a lot of different problems. So, and I don't know how we deal with this youth homelessness issue, because I see it in real stark ways, right? And it's a problem. So yes, it is a problem. And the city's trying to do different things. I don't, not in an effective way. So, yeah, it's definitely something that we need to tackle, and we are trying to tackle here at Precious Blood in ourselves as it relates to the personal program that Joe and Father Kelly was just talking about. I am a proud homeowner now, first time in my life. I've actually owned property, right? I left when I was 17, got out when I was 42, didn't have the opportunity to. But no, like I have a beautiful space building in this community, in the community that I live and now that I work in and now live in the community I consider my community, right? So yes, it's a beautiful thing, right? And it's something hopefully more staff and members of more staff at PBMR can take advantage of and sort of do. But yeah, it's been a personal blessing for me personally to own property, but I'm pretty sure my neighbors would sort of approve of it, right? Because we sort of started cleaning up programs and sort of different community engagement stuff. So yes.
Can you speak to the spiritual dimension of your work with the youth?
So I guess that falls on me, at least to start. So we embrace the spirituality of reconciliation. So I'm a missionary of the Precious Blood, and the spirituality calls us to create safe spaces to accompany people. It's about radical hospitality and really offering the dignity that each person possesses, not because of me or us, but because of God. And so recognizing that human dignity. We don't proselytize. We don't do Bible studies per se. Do prayer services. We go to the site of violence to do prayer services. There's a vigil that every month that happens at a site of violence. We do a lot of different things that are spiritual, but not necessarily Catholic in nature. But I would suggest to you that everybody on staff is a very spiritual person, and we do different things in circles. Our staff meeting, we'll do prayer, we'll do different kinds of discussions on some of the values that we always carry. And we really encourage our young people to be a part of those circles, those spaces, to where they can speak to their own values and then connect those values when the time is right. And if there is an openness to it, to something greater, higher power, God, whoever we want to do. So I think, and I say, but we are also very inclusive. So we don't have a Catholic monitor on the front door, but it's we live our Catholicity in our radical hospitality and widening the table so that everybody's there, is welcome. We haven't talked a little bit much, but we also are in the institution. So we go into the Juvenile Detention Center, Cook County Jail, the Illinois Department of Corrections to begin some of this work as well. And so oftentimes I'm in the jails, it's because our young person might get locked up. And so we can accompany that young person while that person is locked up as well. And moms will call us, hey, my kid's in trouble, can you go see him? Those kinds of things, so that there's a continuum of care, if you will, no matter where that young person or that family member might be.
Somebody from California here has a very interesting comment, and I maybe since Joe, it's your birthday, I'll let you have first tomorrow. I'll have you first crack at it. He says he's a prior lifer from California, and he works with transitioning men from prison to home. And he said society should not judge a man for a moment in his life, because all of us have had moments in time we would rather forget. He's been free from the California Corrections Department, but he said he noticed that we as a society still judge a man by an act in his life. And we do not help hurt people in the system, but as had been said, we punish, and our system is blind. It seems like everything that you all are about is countering that. But Joe, any thoughts as you read this? If you see it in your chat, how would you respond to him?
My response is, just keep going. I got my own little thing that I like to live by. Well, I expect change and accept it. So I expect things to change over time. And when they do, just accept it, for the better. Because it always goes as things will get better, things should get better, and things are going to get better type. But, just not keeping your head down, not hiding in a hole, embracing every chance you can get to change something, whether it's somebody that you close with, point of view, change something with a community, organization, anything to help them better see you, but also better see the person that comes after you. Like for the next person that get out and out of jail, or for the person that's on their way to jail, to get them a better prospect of looking at it in a whole nother way. Just doing anything in your power to keep going forward, keep moving forward, trying to make a change in something or someone's life. Just don't give up, no matter what society throws at you, because society been throwing stuff at us for ages and eons, however you want to put it, and just keeping a more positive role. If you are a faith person, trust in your faith, trust in what the works that you do on a daily basis will be measured in the eyes of the righteous, and you will uphold what you have done. And it might make an impact to the person that you least expect. Somebody that probably turned their back on everything and everybody, and you might be that one person to change their whole life back around and put them back on the right path. So I know it's hard, because when I first came home, I really ain't had nowhere to go neither, but I had Father Kelly and I had the center, and everybody don't have that. So it was easy for me, but it might be more difficult for others. But I don't take nothing that was given to me or that I have now for granted, because I know the type of person I am, and I know that it's a better future for me, because if it wasn't, I wouldn't be in the position I'm in now. So I just think of my position now and just make sure that those around me understand how grateful I am to be around them in their presence, and how grateful I am to just be here and living. Because I was once incarcerated. I was behind bars doing what another man told me. Now I'm out, and I had a choice to either do great or be bad. Get something to keep going back and forth through the system, or just keep moving forward. So I chose to be a better person. I know I still make my own little slip ups. I know in other eyes, like you falling statistically, but in my eyes, I'm gaining control over my life, and as I'm gaining control of my life, others that's in my same shoes to recognize that they could gain control over there. So keep moving.
Thanks, Joe. Let me push that a little bit, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about some of the youngsters that I met, San Quentin, for example, who they didn't have hope. I mean, I hear hope in what you're saying, but how did you get to a place of hope? Because I think for a lot of the young people that I met, they've kind of given up. They're kind of cynical. They don't believe that there's really anything better for them.
Uh, Actually, it's really like, I know it's like probably like I'm repeating myself, but community, being able to come back to my community was probably the best hope I could get. Family, friends, and like just people seeing my potential. It's like I said, everybody doesn't have what I was blessed to have as far as the center and as far as my family and them and people in the neighborhood still recognizing that the harm that I did was not tremendous and where it could never be repaired. So I got my own enlightenment, and I got found peace of mind. I found more patience and things like that. So, but my major thing is I had community. I had a community to return to, and I had people that care for me and that really want to see me win in life. So for me, that's my hope. I always kept it, and I always been like a person that always been bright. I always looked at the brighter things rather than dwelled on the negative things for too long. So, yeah.
Jojo or Fred, anything you wanted to add?
Well, it was two things I wanted to touch on. I appreciate Joe with that inspirational comment because he gives me inspiration just hearing him and watching him because he is our future. And he would, even in making mistakes or misstepping, he still worked to getting back on track. The thing I would say is also to not be a passive audience member in your life, but an active agent in determining how your life's going to move forward. As a person who's has been released from prison, I recognize there are permanent barriers that we face. There's policies that probably limit what spaces we can go into, what type of housing we can rent, or whatever the case may be. I would say you don't have to try to recreate the wheel. Connect with an organization that's already doing this work and find out how you can contribute to that work that's already being done in whatever way that's possible for you. The second thing I would say, because this lends to it, someone put in the chat, like, what advice will we have for someone doing this work in prison ministry? And that speaks to what Joe just mentioned. When you walk in and you see a person and you look at them for ways that they are valuable and that they have something to offer, and you treat them as such, and you show and look for ways that you can add value to their lives, that is profound. It's much more than correction or advice or telling me this is what you should go about doing, but it's showing me through your actions that you see me as an individual, that you see that, man, I love this quote, not judging me by the chapter you walk in on my book, but actually seeing potential in me. So I would say to anyone that's doing this work, when you go in, it's not just to go in and spend a little time to get a good feeling or give some words of encouragement, but it's about creating a space where human dignity can be realized, because the prison system is a dehumanizing space for anyone who suffered trauma, and that tends to add to it. But when people see value, that made me, when I was incarcerated and I saw people coming in, even though it was nearly a blizzard outside, and they came in just to have regular conversations with me to talk about their latest vacation, that made me want to replicate that behavior, and I want to be that to somebody. And thanks to the work that Father Kelly and the rest of the Precious Blood has been doing and laid the foundation for before I got here, I have been able to go inside the juvenile detention centers and try to be that same hope that someone was for me. So I would ask that in this way, and that anyone's doing this work, to remember and not get frustrated when people don't accept the advice that you're trying to give them or you're trying to push them to a change, but just be the space in which change can happen in.
So I was just reading one of the quotes. I think it's from DR, and the question was there ever a moment in which your strength and faith was weakened, and what did you do about it? Like I originally said, I got locked up. I was 17 years old, and of course my faith was, my strength was checked. My faith was questioned. The question of what was life about was sort of censored in my face. It was a traumatic event in the beginning, right? In the beginning of my incarceration. But what I did have was I had praying parents, right? I had praying supporters, right? I had people cover me in their grace, right? Not my grace. I was a knucklehead as a kid, right? I wasn't, in my mind, deserving of grace or didn't even understand what that meant, right? But people had it for me. They had it in boatloads, and they were extended into me in ways that I didn't sort of fully understand until I grew up. And the hope that they had for me in my future eventually sort of trickled down to me, and I, and it strengthened, my faith, my just my personal strength and my hope in myself, and my hope in people, and my hope in abilities, in people to sort of change and do different, and me to change. So, and that's all I ever had when I look back was hope, right? So hope is all we ever have, right? Like life is nothing without hope, right? You must have hope, right? That's the only that's the only way anything moves or change or any of that. So I just would encourage people, if you can't sort of depend or rely on your own hope, place it in God, and He'll show you what He can do with that, right? So yeah, not to get too overly spiritual, but I know we're talking. So yeah. So.
Thank you. So, in the few minutes that we have left, I'm wondering, and any of you can answer this, but how do you work with other agencies or other groups like yourselves, partnering with them in the communities?
I'll go first. Not well, well, if you're doing the work in the way that we see needs to be done, right? So I'm one of these people. If you're not doing it in the sort of in the way that we do it at Precious Blood, I am biased, right? I think it should be done this way. So if you're doing it correctly, we'll work out well. If not, we'll have some problems. In terms of systems, mainly government systems in which we sort of get grants and stuff from, I think we work well with them. I think they are, depending on what agency you're working with, there's a real partner mentality with a couple of these city-based organizations, which allows us to sort of follow our mission more closely without compromising it too much to different government rules and regulations. I'll let Father Kelly speak to the other bigger orgs, but in my little small lane of operation, I think we're working pretty well now.
Yeah, I think so. We do a lot of it. One of our pillars is collaboration. So we work a lot with other orgs that are doing this kind of work, per what Fred said. So we really recognize, so we have what we call restorative justice hubs, which is a kind of an organization. We have a director for this hubs. So there's 7 different community member organizations with this hub, some people that help us do some trauma-informed care and some outcomes and things like that. And we get together regularly. And because we have a stronger voice, because now we're 7 communities speaking out, not just one community in the south side of Chicago. So it's critically important. But there are a lot of people, orgs, churches, in our community and beyond that really do not work with young people, that are afraid of the young people, that are afraid of this work. And so really kind of close their doors ever so gently, but close them on families and young people. And that's one of the reasons why we have radical hospitality. We recognize that's not easy. It's not easy to welcome and invite people in, a young person who's hurt and harmed and maybe coming in the door a little angry. If you have to work incredibly hard to help that young person feel safe and say it's okay that let's walk around the block first before we come into the building, so that you can come in a good way and maintain that safety for other people. That's critically important. It's not the hospitality of my grandmother, where it's just a cookie and a whatever she gave us. It's the hospitality of digging deep and really trying to accompany somebody in their pain and their hurt.
If I can add to an example there, because we partner with smaller organizations in the community too that are doing this work. One example was during the height of COVID, when the community was afraid to come out and afraid to engage, we partnered with different organizations to not only deliver food food to elderly people in the community and then try to go pick up medication for them during this height of COVID. But we also doing a census, partnered with an organization, and we conducted a drive-through census where people can fill out the census to help uplift our community, because we serve both the African American and Latino communities. This is the makeup of back of the yards area. So we try to really recognizing that our impact can be that much more impactful if we collaborate with different organizations. And sometimes it's not the big organizations that you readily hear about in the news, but it's smaller or upstart organizations that's trying to do this work. And Precious Blood act as a host on many occasions for just organizations to come and have their meetings here, so they can develop and build out their capacity for this work. So we collaborate in a variety of ways.
Well, thank you. You know, we're getting down to the last few minutes, and I want to be sure that anybody who wants to follow up on the work that you're doing or is aware of your website, which we reposted in the chat box, but it's www.pbmr.org. And a couple of commercials coming up. Our next program is tomorrow, April 21st. It will be sharing synodal feedback. As you know, the church is going through this synodal process right now of gathering information around the world from everybody in the church and even outside the church as we move forward as a faith community. So you can join CPMC tomorrow for a discussion about submitting information you may have gathered on the Synod. And perhaps, especially we're looking for people who have been gathering information from people who are either incarcerated or formerly incarcerated. And tomorrow, Erica Cohen-Moore from the National Association of Catholic Chaplains and Joe Cotton from the Archdiocese of Seattle will guide us through the process of submitting information to the USCCB, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, and to Catholic Prison Ministry Coalition. So this is the, you can see the information here and go to the website for the link. Also, a week from today, which is the 28th of, actually a week from tomorrow, is that right? Yes, Thursday, April 28th, Prison Fellowship Angel Tree Reentry Town Hall. And this will be, CPMC will be sponsoring a discussion about how parishes and communities can support families who are impacted by incarceration through the wonderful Angel Tree program that's been done for years by Prison Fellowship. We always did this at San Quentin, and it's a great program where it helps build relationships, or strengthen relationships in families that are separated from their parents. So incarcerated parents are able to give their children gifts. This is something that all of us can be involved in the outside. They also have, not only do they gifts at Christmas time, but they also have summer camp programs and other support programs for kids whose parents are incarcerated. And finally, on May 5th, there will be a town hall sponsored by Colby House Ministry, and they're going to share their pathway for healing and insight through art. And so that will be Sister Angela Hinkey describing her one-on-one painting project, Heart Ministry. And also Emily Cortina, who's the coordinator of outreach and formation, will present artwork at Colby House, created by persons who are affected by the incarceration system. So some really great programs coming up. And then a month from now, our next Catholic Prison Ministry Coalition webinar will be Colby Ministries. That's Wednesday, May 11th. Actually, I'm sorry, that's not Colby. This is Accompanying the Whole Person, a psychosocial and educational approach. Mike McGillicuddy from Colby and Travis Bond from Shining Light Ministries will be speaking. So be sure to mark those down and join us when you can for our next webinar. Thank you again to Father David, to Jojo, Fred, and Joe for a wonderful presentation of your work. And may God continue to bless you in this important ministry. You inspire all of us to be involved in this as well.